what's a hook? And you get the same response that most people give when you ask that, which is like, hey, it's the thing that gets attention. It's the thing that gets their attention and makes them look at you. And I've never understood that because I could smack you and have your attention, but that doesn't mean you want to buy from me. It's like, it's not a good definition of a hook.
Levelin Up Nation, it is another episode. So grateful to be here. My name is Brigham Blackham. I'm your success story strategist, and we have Steve J Larsen on today. Wow, what an awesome guy here. Now, he's the Secretary of Capitalism. This is his own title, which I think is phenomenal. I always think of like the capitalist pig like that. We're going to talk about why that's so important to know, but today we're going to talk about the dramatic demonstration and how we can actually unlock some really great connections with potential customers by being a little bit more dramatic, have a little bit more flair, and have fun while we're doing it. So Steve, welcome to the call. Welcome to Levelin Up podcast. So glad to have you here, my friend.
Thanks for having me, man. Really excited to be here. My honor.
Yeah. So let's first define what is a dramatic demonstration, because this is something you're so good at, and I think it's so much fun to watch online. You crush it all over the place. But yeah, tell us, what is a dramatic demonstration for those that don't know?
Yeah, in short, it's a way to create a lot of attention in a short amount of time that results in leads. And that's really what it is. It's where it really came from, I was watching, it was like, I don't know, late 2019, early 2020, the world was about to go nuts. And I was being a nerd, and I was studying Rich Dead Guys. And I decided that I would go and start literally line by line comparing all of P.T. Barnum's marketing campaigns. And it was an interesting exercise to go through, because there's a very strong pattern that began. And I was like, oh my gosh, even at the beginning of his career, all the way 30 years forward, at the end of his career, he was doing the same first step, usually, same few steps. And then the middle, same few steps. And then the end, same few steps. And it was the same steps, whether or not he had money or didn't, like at the beginning of his career. And I remember I was dropping something off at Russell's house. And I walked up to his house and I handed him, what we were giving him. And I said, hey, I'm learning a lot. Like, I just saw this crazy pattern on how Barnum would go launch, without the internet, of course, right? This is the 1800s. And Funnel Hacking Live was happening soon. So it was like 6 months later, he reached back out and he goes, hey, that was like awesome stuff. And do you want to co-author a book on it? And I was like, sure. So I've been working on this material for about 5 years now, and I've taught it a ton. It's gone through three events of my own, one with Russell. We've spoken at Funnel Hacking Live multiple times about it, but what was really fascinating pattern inside of it was what he would do was in his marketing. I think this is one of the places that a lot of people get messed up on when they're doing any kind of marketing, is that they are spreading information about their offer instead of spreading the hook. That was one of the biggest insights from studying what Barnum was doing. Very seldom did he actually talk about what you were going to come and purchase. Instead, he was speaking and spreading hook material. And so that's why it's been such a big thing. Thousands of people have done a dramatic demonstration now. And it's not, some people have been like, oh, it's just another form of a launch. It's not. It's an order of approaching these channels that we all have access to in a specific way that gets the most attention in the shortest amount of time.
That's a great segue into one of the things I love to talk about, which P.T. Barnum was awesome. He has this one story that makes me just laugh. As people are coming in off of the train, he was plowing a field with an elephant, and that type of hook was stuff that he did all the time. He was absolutely nuts and crazy. So tell us one of your favorite hooks that you've seen from P.T. Barnum, and then let's talk about maybe one of those examples in your own life.
Yeah, that's absolutely. So one of my favorites, what's funny is the hook doesn't always have to make sense. There was one story that's really interesting. He instead of giving a beggar, his museum was in New York, in the center of New York City, and a beggar was asking him for money, and instead of giving him money, he hired him. And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to walk around this specific circuit of like blocks around New York City. And every time you get to one of the turning spots, you're going to put a brick down. And, but you always have a brick in your hand. And so he had him walk around at like 4 or 5 different stations kind of around his museum. And he wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. He had to look very somber, and he had to be holding a brick. And so he'd go from one location to the next, and he'd swap out a brick. And then now he's holding the new brick. And people are like watching him. And they're like, what is this guy doing? And he wasn't allowed to say anything or answer anybody, but pretty soon people start following him. Well, the route took him, he had to end by walking into the front door of Barnum's museum. And he'd walk around for a second and then walk out the back door. Well, so that people could keep following him, they would start buying tickets to just follow him. And it worked so well that there was 1,000 people. I think it was like work at 2. And I think it was by like day 3 or 4, the police made him stop because it was literally blocking traffic. There were so many crowds of people just following him. Right? And so the funny thing is that a hook doesn't always have to make sense. And I think where people get hooks messed up is they think it's a headline. It's like, well, the headline is where we express the hook, but it's not the same thing. So my definition of a hook, sorry, something's in my throat. My definition of a hook, and I mean, I spent so much time when I was working for Russell, I'd be like, hook. And you get the same response that most people give when you ask that, which is like, hey, it's the thing that gets attention, you know, it's the thing that gets their attention and makes them look at you. And I've never understood that, you know, because I could smack you and have your attention, but that doesn't mean you want to buy from me. You know, it's like, it's not a good definition of a hook. And so I started coming up with a new definition of it throughout all this research, and realized that all a hook really is the thing that gets somebody to raise their hand and say, tell me more. That's it. But it's the kind of tell me more where it's like, tell me more about your offer. What's going on here? I want to follow you, so I'll buy a ticket into a museum. It doesn't always have to directly relate to whatever offer you're selling. One of my favorite examples of this in real world, it's actually one of the first places I ever learned this, is I was a door-to-door sales guy. And I was doing pest control, and I was doing security sales. And later in college, I started doing telemarketing. This is way before funnels for me and all that. And I just knew I needed to learn how to sell if I was going to be an entrepreneur. So I was shocked to find that all 3 of those jobs, totally different companies, had a very similar scripting style. And now I'd look at that and go like, well, yeah, it's sales, but I didn't know that, right? And we had 2 different parts of our script, and they would call it part 1 and part 2. And when I was doing security sales, same thing. Pest control, same thing. Telemarketing, same thing. Literally different geographical locations too. They all called it part 1 and part 2. I was like, are these guys trading notes? Like, what, how are they, you know? And it was interesting because we were not allowed to talk about the offer, what price it was, you know, any details of contracts, none of that until part 2 of the script. Well, as a new salesperson, my inclination was to walk around and talk about the offer, right? This is what we got: pest control, spray your house, bugs, right? And that's how most entrepreneurs also approach marketing, is they just walk around talking about their offer all the time. So in the sales job, that's really I started first experiencing this for myself. So part 1, the whole purpose of part 1 was basically to get people to just say, tell me more. Like, how much is it? I'm leaning in a little bit. I'm engaging with you. And that's it. And so the way we would do it in pest control is I would knock on the door, and you've probably been, you know, someone's come to your door, I'm sure. It's the same script. Everyone uses it, but it works. So they knock on the door, you know, hey, what's up? We're spraying the Joneses house right there down the street. Getting our truck here is literally half of our cost. And so we actually can spray your house for 50% off while we're here. Is 4 or 5 o'clock okay today? And then we would just wait. And that was the opening script. And like 9 times out of 10, they're not going to say 5 o'clock, right? That's not why we're asking it. Instead, we're just trying to get them to go, wait, what? And I usually would repeat it. Hey, what's up? Jones's house down the street, 4 or 5 o'clock today. You know, and I would just repeat it. And at that point, maybe 10% of people would go 5 o'clock. But what most of them would do was either shut the door, or they would start to ask questions that were engaging and be like, well, what kind of bugs does it treat? And I'm like, well, you know, and I start going through a little thing, and then I go right back to it. Is 4 or 5 o'clock okay today? And the magic question when we were allowed to go to part 2 was, how much is it? Or tell me more. And so this was such a big deal in these different sales jobs that, I mean, literally in our morning meetings when we were practicing like overcoming yesterday's top objection and all this stuff that you do with the sales team, they would ask, how many times did you get to part 2? How many times did you get to part 2? How many times did you get to part 2? That's where you can talk about the offer. That's where you can talk about money. That's where you can talk about contracts, all that stuff. And so I think one of the biggest reasons this dramatic demonstration book is such a big deal, that Russell and I are co-authoring, is that in my experience, as I've been applying this for the last 5 years with companies, it's been the cure of lead flow because it's not leading with the offer. It's much like Barnum, right? He's not leading with the offer. He's leading with a hook that gets someone to say, tell me more. And marketers are actually being salespeople right now, not marketers, especially when they're talking about offers, and you see all these marketing channels that people have access to, and they just start dumping in all this. Well, they're literally pitching in their Facebook post, or they're pitching in their ad when they should be just getting people to come to the next page, right? Yeah. And it's not, anyway, that's the general concept of it, and the scripting style that we actually do that is inside the book. So,
no, I think that's phenomenal, and keeping those relatively separate so that you first gain their attention, because that's what social media is about, is building that attention, building the story, having them have a reason to connect with you. Then after they've connected, they'll say, well, tell me a little bit more. That tell me more is the secret sauce, is what it sounds like. And I'm excited to get your book when when does that come out? I know that pretty soon. Eventually.
Well, last week on social media, I did delete it and start over. So there was a flow problem with it. I didn't like it. So we have I know what the concepts are, and now we're just literally writing. So
nice.
No, but what's interesting is it's ended up that I've had to like redefine what marketing and sales even is, because really part 2, you can think of that as sales, but part 1 is marketing. And where I'm also seeing a lot of funnel builders mess up right now is they're saying things like, I think it's just important to know, we don't call it a marketing funnel for a reason. There's no marketing in a sales funnel. They're totally different things. It's like, just because you finished a sale. And so people will be like, well, I'm not one funnel away or whatever. And it's like, my gut tells me you did what most people do, which is you finished the sales funnel, but didn't do any marketing. There's no marketing in a sales. They're totally different roles. And so marketing is really what happens pre-page 1 of the funnel. Get someone to say, tell me more. And then the lead is handed off on page 1 of the funnel. It's like a handoff. It's like, all right, marketing department's like, we found someone who raised their hand, right? And sales is like, got it, right? And they hand off on page 1. And that's kind of how I think about it now. And it's made leads and lead gen a lot easier. And the platforms can change and get smarter and update. And they're going to change 1 billion times more in the rest of each of our lives. And it makes you a little more bulletproof with lead gen. Because I'm noticing that people use things like the perfect webinar script in marketing channels, but it's for sales. So of course it's offending people. Of course it's not getting anyone to come to your funnels or come to your stuff. And so it's literally, that's why I deleted it, because I was like, this book is a big freaking deal. I told Russell, I was like, this book, and this is what we've been talking about, is like, this book will be as big to marketing as the perfect webinar script has been to sales, because there's no shortage of traffic today. There's more traffic. I mean, there's more traffic right now than when you and I first started talking. And so all these people are like, man, I got a traffic issue. There's no such thing as a traffic problem. What people are having is a messaging issue, and they're using the wrong messaging in marketing channels, expecting them to like, tell me more. It's like, nah, it's pitch fest. It's like someone knocking on the door and going, just order. You open the door and order form in hand.
Order form, like, sign here. What am I signing? I don't.
You're like, what are you doing? I didn't give you permission to do this. What are you doing? I didn't raise my hand. So that's what's happening right now.
Man, so I was just at Toastmasters this morning. I gave a talk about permission-based sales, and that just reminded me, because I talked about my wife having this experience where we let our mother, my mom, her mother-in-law, watch our kids for the weekend. And she had this great idea. My darling daughter had the curly hair, really long, all the way to her shoulders. She's like, I'm going to cut her hair as a babysitter. And she cut it without asking. And then my wife shows up and she's like,
cool.
What? And she's like, well, what do you think of it? Do you like it? Yeah. And she's like, I have nothing nice to say. So she walked out of the room and I was like, this is going to be bad. This is bad. And we ended up, it took like a week, but after a lot of emotions, things evened out and it was okay. But man, not getting the permission first, that's a big no-no. And in sales like that, that's exactly what a sales wall is. It's not getting permission to talk to them, not getting permission to engage with them. They didn't opt into the newsletter. Why did you send them the sales letter? Why did you give them the order form? Yeah. So let's go here for a second. When you say marketing cures most of your sales issues, what is one of the favorite tips or favorite tricks to marketing that you would give a brand new entrepreneur that's like, hey, this is the thing that will help you get to that next level?
Yeah, really, part of what we've been going into, and it's taken me a few years to develop it, but it's a new scripting style. And yeah, I said this to my mastermind the other day. I was on stage and I was like, just play ball with me for a second. Like, okay, first recorded time in human history, what, like 6,000 BC? You know, I don't know if it's much earlier than that, maybe a little bit. 6,000 BC,
something like
that. We go through 6,000 years, and then, then we're at like the 2000, and suddenly the internet comes along, and it's publicly available since 1991. It's pretty safe to say that in the history of humanity, we're the early movers in the internet, right? Yeah. Like, how fascinating, the exciting time we get to live in when you think about like the history of humanity. And I wanted to point out that, because I had a buddy who was like, he's like, it's never been harder to make money on the internet. I was like, it's never been easier to make money. If you can't figure it out right now, you're not gonna, right? Like, we have such easy access to distribution. It's all over the place. Mm-hmm. But what's been happening, I really think it's happened since 2020. These platforms have just gotten smarter. That's all. And so scripting styles that used to work, because of us being early movers and first mover advantage of the internet, just doesn't work anymore. It's like when a new platform comes along, we all know that if you get on it early, you kind of get, the algorithm kind of credits you a little bit more, right? You get that extra little cookie with reach. And after a while, it backs off and it gets smarter, makes harder rules and things like that. But think of the internet like that. It's like we had the first mover advantage of being on the internet. And then now the platforms just got smarter. And so it's not going to go backwards. It's like, now's the time to adapt and realize that there's multiple types of scripting. There's scripting for sales, but that's totally different than scripting for marketing. One's getting the hand to raise. The other one is presenting the offer and overcoming objections, right? And so that's the way I think about it, is like, we need to go in and say, I'm finding that most companies right now have a messaging problem, especially those companies who have had an offer that was working. They're like, it was working, it was converting, it was crushing in the past, and now suddenly it's like dried up. It's like, but there's more traffic than there was a couple of years ago. So there's no such thing as a traffic problem. We have a messaging issue, and it's an actual pandemic in the internet marketing space, though, because you got all these marketers that actually been using sales material. So I think that's how people go fix it. And all my consulting clients and people that I work with, that's been the fix. Has not been, a little revamp in their offer. Every funnel could use some upgrading, but it's not the biggest pain point. It's actually just been, they don't know how to talk about their thing in a way that gets people to go, wait, tell me more, and not feel waterboarded.
Right. I've been reading a lot of different marketing materials, but one of the principles that sticks out to me is this idea that if you want to really get success in sales, you need to have that massive amount of people that you serve. And you go into, like, say, if you're going to be a hot dog salesman, you don't have to necessarily have the best hot dog. You need to go where there's massive crowds that are hungry. That's it. And then you say, hey, we have hot dogs here. That's how simple it can be. But when you say a messaging problem, what are some of the ways that you help talk to people's benefits or those pain points so that it doesn't feel salesy, but it just feels genuine?
Let me, I'll pull up an actual example and just read it here. So,
sweet.
So I call it an offer hook, and it's something that, first time I ever taught this to Russell, he was like, we have got to speak at FHL about this. I was like, sounds good. So this is what we talked about, not last FHL, the one before, when he and I did a co-speech together. And it was about this formula because of the exact things I've been talking about. The cure of lead flow, as I've been calling it. I've also been calling it the perfect marketing script. So what it does is it highlights the customer's story, not yours. So if anybody's been walking around and they're using things like the perfect webinar script or their origin story, nobody cares about you yet. You know, it's too early. It's like, again, opening the door. Just keep the analogy in the head of the door-to-door salesperson. You open the door up and someone's like, here's my backstory. And I started in the gutter. And now I'm no longer in the gutter. And if you want to be like me, you should buy this pest control. It's like, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? It's and it's not that people don't want to know who you are, but it's not their first question in their head. The first question in their head is like, am I safe? Why are you on my door? You know, do you understand my needs? I don't really care about your backstory unless you also understand who I am. And so there's a really good book. Just trying to see if I had it. It's called Play Bigger. And fantastic book. Yeah, great book, right? And one of the major principles in the book is that it's like, hey, whoever can describe the customer's problem the best, it is assumed that they have the best solution.
I have that quote. You're talking about the Blair Warren's quote?
Yeah, that's another good one.
Is that the? Yeah. Okay. No.
You're talking one sentence persuasion course?
Yeah. So people will do anything for those who encourage their dreams, justify their failures, allay their fears, confirm their suspicions, and help them throw rocks at their enemies. One of my favorite quotes. I like had it geared up because it's like, that's so good.
Yeah, it's such a good one. That's a good one too. But in Play Bigger, it specifically says like you need to understand how to describe the customer's problem better than the person can themselves. And what's funny is that if you can do that, they begin to assume that you have the best solution simply because you can describe their problem better than anybody else. So if you think about what's happened in a general marketplace, most people lead with their solution, their product or offer or whatever, right? So it's a solution. They're like really loud. And one of the easiest ways to outposition everybody is to simply be good at describing the customer's problem better than they can. It immediately cuts away the noise because the person goes, wow, I'm heard, I'm understood. Wait, you probably have a good product. So that's definitely one of the reasons why the offer hook formula works, is because it's not the origin story. It's not the perfect webinar script. I don't care about you yet, right? And in terms of the psyche and the psychology of the sale and what's happening, we don't need to introduce you as the attractive character. And I'm actually tired of the attractive character model myself also. So you don't need to be an attractive character to pull this stuff off, you know, talking head on camera, that kind of stuff. Let me read one of these to you. This is a hook that's being used right now to help women who have osteoporosis. Okay. There's one of my clients helps run the marketing for tons of OsteoStrong clinics, which is a business like Tony Robbins is in and stuff like that. So they're using this hook right now on their pages. They got a 55% opt-in rate with this thing. And sweet. It's it goes to like book a call. Okay, here we go. So what we do is we identify a storyline that the customer goes, that's me, right? And instead of what most people do with their hooks is they just like, they write a headline, and it's not a hook. Most headlines, the way they're written, are not things going to tell me more. That's what they're supposed to do. Most people still don't do that. All right, so imagine this with so things aren't improving based on your latest bone density scan. Now the doctor wants to meet again to share a few options. But why? You had this exact chat not long ago, and you're on the same path, taking meds which have been force prescribed to you. What choice did you have? So for months now, you've gone along with these doctor's orders, taking hard to pronounce medications, going on more walks, and increasing your calcium. To make matters more awkward, friends and family have always been side-seat driving your bone health, constantly checking up with you. But over the years, you're actually the one that they've looked up to as an example of health. Back again with the doctor, you're told things would have been worse if you hadn't been following your prescription, but the advice to keep doing what you are is the only thing you're left with. As you get back into the car, you notice the biggest fear you have is painfully letting your bones get so weak you end up in permanent assisted living, unable to move or really live again. Will slowly deteriorating represent the rest of your life? What simple but unorthodox path could you take in the next 12 months to keep all of those medications from slowly poisoning your bones to death and restore the longevity you're once known for. Then we got bonepoison.com. So if marketing doesn't make you feel a little bit like, whew, can I say that?
Yeah.
Then it's probably not emotional enough to actually be used in any kind of lead gen or sales funnel activity. And so people are introducing themselves on their funnels most of the time way too, unless it's some credibility play you're running or whatever, like a mastermind or something. But most of the time, the issues that people are running into is they literally have a copy issue. I think one of the biggest outcomes I want this book to have for people is that they should realize that there is no such thing as internet marketing. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah,
it's marketing. And the internet's just a distribution channel. And it's actually easier to learn what marketing is when you don't include the internet in it, right? Like, oh, what time I post on Facebook, that's marketing. It's like, that's a tactic, that's it. And so that's why studying these rich dead guys is actually been easier to learn what true marketing is, because they didn't have the internet, right? But they still made millions of dollars, a lot of them. And it's like, so it's been easier to understand that. Then we can come in and say, okay, now that I've created marketing, I'm going to use the internet to just distribute that marketing. That's a lot easier. All right. I've been contending. I know I'm kind of on a rant. Hopefully it's all right.
You're good.
I've been on a rant on this because one of the key points here and phrases have been like, hey, look, there's no such thing as internet marketing. Number two, marketing should only ever be measured in leads, lead flow. That's it. Like, we can't measure marketing in likes, comments, subscribes, barely list size. Depends on why they joined. It's like if I put a video out and nobody ever comes to me and says, tell me more, it wasn't marketing. And I'm not saying there's no value, but it's not marketing. Marketing is only measured in lead gen, right? And this style of hook writing is one of the ways that we do that. And I've been using tons of client stuff now. I've written almost 100 of these hooks for people. And it's been fun to watch what's been happening with people when they go out and they use them. Because the customer goes, man, I feel understood, right? Tell me more. And we begin measuring marketing that way rather than, all right, how much did my channel grow? Which that's not really marketing. It's a helpful metric, but it's not marketing.
Yeah, I think tapping into the story, that's one of the things I absolutely love. And articulating some problem better than the customer. That is awesome, because you're validating every single challenge that they've been experiencing. And if you can articulate it well, they already assume that you can solve the problem. So thank you for that reminder. I love it. Steve, in the last few moments we have together, is there any piece of advice you would give yourself when you were brand new that you're like, just do this and things will work out?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a super painful experience I had. It was when I first started working for Russell, so I was the funnel guy, right? But I didn't have my own successful funnel. What was happening was, and this is a very painful lesson, but it literally is how the book is starting out with this story. It's like, I was giving Russell funnels that he was asking, sitting next to him, and he'd be saying, good job. And then he'd delete like 90% of it. I was like, based where I come from, that's a bad job, right? I was like, right. And so for the first 6 months, I actually legitimately thought Russell was going to fire me. And I would come back home, to her little apartment at the time, and to my ex-wife, and I would say, like, I think I'm going to get fired. She'd go, I thought you're doing a good job. I was like, I thought so too. He keeps saying I'm doing a good job, but he's deleting almost everything that I give him, right? And then I'd give him the next funnel, and he'd only delete 89%, right? And then 88. It took 13 months. I remember we changed offices. I walked into his office, and he goes, this is such a key moment that's changed my life. He goes, hey man, you turned that funnel in last night, right? I said, yeah. He said, good job. He said, I only changed one word in the headline. And I was been so scared for so long that I was not doing a good job at this thing that I just double fist just yelled. I was like, woo, right? And he was like, whoa. He goes, right? Because I yelled. And he goes, what? And I said, dude, that one word, that's awesome, man. I thought you were going to fire me forever. And he goes, fire you? I said, yeah. And he said this line to me that changed my life. He said, when you came to me, you were already building good funnels. You're already a good funnel builder. I've been turning you into a marketer. And the floor fell out, because I'm not going to lie, until that moment, I thought building funnels was marketing. It took 13 months for me to finally look left to the other dude in the room who like birthed this industry and be like, whatever he's doing is actually making the money. And so that'd be the advice that I would that's really why the dramatic demonstration book means so much to me, is because it's really been this like 8-year journey that I've gone to figure out what marketing actually is, because it's not funnel building, right? It's not just putting a video up just for putting a video up. And to recognize that the true money skill is marketing. It's not even funnel building, right? That's a sales function. And a lot of my friends who've made just freakish money, just tens and 50s of millions, they have a crappy funnel. What they're experts at, the money skill, is marketing. You get good at just that. You could sell something that's bad. Don't. It's wrong. But it is the money skill. All right. I was like, that's the one to go after. And that changed me. And so about 6 months later, I left my job and I was like, I'm going to go get like really good at marketing. So anyway, yeah.
I love it. And where can people find your book when it comes out? Do you have a...
Yeah. When it comes out, Dramatic Demonstrations.
Yes.
DramaticDemonstrations.com.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, Steve, for being on today. It has been a pleasure. I hope you guys feel that excitement and that energy to go and connect with Steve a little bit more. I always appreciate hearing from you. And man, it is a pleasure to share the space with you. Appreciate you, Steve.
It's awesome, man. Thanks for having me on. This has been great.
Absolutely. Hey, God bless, guys.